Hey everybody, this is Space Marine Steve, and I'm from Play on Tabletop and here at Hyperspace Hobbies, and today we are going to be talking about the Crimson Fists, a really fantastic Space Marine chapter with a style and paint job, a really vibrant backstory, and some really cool rules also. So welcome to Master the Chapter. Today, I am taking a very quick look at the Crimson Fists chapter, and they come with a very unique set of rules and some really awesome backstory as well. And first, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at their chapter tactic, and their chapter tactic is called No Matter the Odds, and a pretty fitting chapter tactic name, actually. And what it does is it allows them to get one, additional hits on sixes with all of their bolt weapons, and then two, they get +1 to hit whenever they're shooting at something that they are outnumbered by. So it's very cool, very flavorful. I'm also always really critical of Games Workshop's rule writing, as we all, I guess, should be. I like it when rules on the table kind of match the theme and the style that they have in the story or the lore. I don't want every single rule to be amazing. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. However, what I do want is I want it to be both, one, reasonable, and two, representative of what it's like in the lore or the stories. I'm going to talk about two things in relation to Games Workshop's rule writing, and the first one is the strength of the rule itself, and then two, how representative is that rule in the lore. And I've just come up with a fun 5-point scale that I can use to grade that. Before I kick into this, remember that this is just my opinion. I'm a humble Space Marine player who really loves Space Marines, and it is just my opinion. If you have a different opinion, please put it down in the comments sections. Tell me what you think, and we can have a discussion about it. I always love talking about Space Marines. For the strength of the chapter, I would give this a 2 out of 5 and label it as situational. The problem with No Matter the Odds, as cool as it is that you, one, need to be playing bolters just to get those extra sixes on the bolt guns, and then two, you need to be outnumbered. So those are two boxes that unfortunately are sometimes just hard to check, and so there it feels in some games, some matchups, that you're just not really playing with a chapter tactic because it might not be applicable, or you might want to run a unit that just doesn't seem to function with it, etc., etc. However, I am going to give the Crimson Fists a 4 out of 5 and label this as representative of what they're like in the story. The bolt weapon rule is clearly a callback to their Imperial Fist parent chapter, and the +1 to hit when you're outnumbered thing is also very clearly a nod to the time that they spent on Rin's World fighting with like a little baby fraction of their chapter against a giant horde of orcs. So where do they get all of this from? Where's this rich story derived from? And that would come from the disaster at Rin's World. So Rin's World is actually a very idyllic place. It's a really nice place. It's not a place that you would usually find a Space Marine. However, their place was that nice until it was assaulted by a gigantic wave of orcs, a Waaagh, if you will. Actually, a very unfortunate accident took place here. A rogue plasma missile kind of like went up and then just came right back down and obliterated their monastery fortress, and with it like 600 however many Space Marines, and it basically obliterated the chapter. There was very few of them left, and it was just the chapter master Pedro Cantor who, like, miraculously, of course, survived this tragedy along with a handful of his battle brothers, and all of them had to band together in this very intense moment of their chapter's history. And so the Crimson Fist were forced to alter their tactics a little bit and fend off the orcs through the adoption of more guerrilla warfare tactics. And through a very long war of attrition, they did eventually beat back the Greenskin Menace. And this is where we get this No Matter the Odds from in their history. The Crimson Fists being a successor chapter of the Imperial Fists, I think it's important that we discuss the difference between the two of them, because there is quite a difference. The Imperial Fists are kind of a no-nonsense and Also, no subtlety kind of chapter, because they are all about military might. They believe in the power of their weapons to get things done, and they also really believe in siege warfare and relying very heavily on defensive tactics. Where Crimson Fists, on the other hand, while keeping the infinity for the bolt guns, they do adopt a much more flexible strategy and actually fight a lot more akin to like an ultramarine, where they are more about achieving the objective, making sure that they're fighting to protect the lives of their battle brothers, where Imperial Fists are more like, I don't know, bomb them from space. So I think that it's really important to sit those differences, because they play very, very different, even though they've got fists in the name. And of course, I couldn't get through this video without talking about Pedro Cantor, the chapter master and the hero of Rin's World. And so Pedro Cantor has actually got a really awesome story, because after that rogue missile just kind of dropped down and their fortress monastery was, gone, he took the collection of battle brothers that he had left, and he made a very long and hard trek from the monastery to New Rin City, through Orc Warband versus Orc Warband, after Orc Warband. It's just warbands everywhere. And they reached the city just absolutely thrashed. Yeah, there wasn't one of them that wasn't effectively mortally wounded, and yet all of them still wanted to remain in the fight. And so they got there, and they led the remaining Imperial forces to an eventual yet very hard-fought victory. And so Pedro Cantor was then faced with a choice. And this is actually hard for a Space Marine too, because Space Marines are fairly prideful. So what he had to choose was, because his chapter was almost entirely obliterated, he could, one, take the remaining of them, hop on a ship, and go and just try and kill as many orcs as possible until eventually they all died. That would have been option one, and that would have been the most common option for a Space Marine. All glory, no breaks, just go. However, the other option was to try and very slowly rebuild Rin's World, fortify the space, and expand the chapter. But that would mean having to go, no, we're not going to keep fighting because we have something different we have to do. And that doesn't always fly with Space Marines. However, he made that choice. And he made the choice to humbly sit down, work on expanding the chapter, and refortifying Rin's World, their home planet. And this is one that I really love this, because it stands out. And he, as the hero and liberator of Rin's World, also then rebuilt the chapter. And if he didn't do this, they wouldn't exist today. It just wouldn't have happened. So let's say you are playing Crimson Fists and you love them just as much as I do, and you want to play them narratively on the battlefield just like I want to. A lot of my armies that I play are usually fairly narratively driven, and that's something I take a lot of pride in. And I want to play that as best as I can possibly play it. So let's say you want to do the same thing as me, and you want to play Crimson Fists like they were intended to be played on the battlefield. So I'm going to pick two narrative choices for you, and in those two choices, I'll explain a little bit of why they're there. So the first one is aggressors. Oh, if you love aggressors just like I do, they are perfect for Crimson Fists for a couple of reasons. One, their hands are strapped with bolters, and so sixes, you're going to get those exploding sixes whenever they shoot. Also, they have got fists, big power gloves, and it just fits with the name, Crimson Fist. They've got two of them. It's awesome. Secondly, or thirdly, I guess, because the power gloves, but thirdly, there's only 3 of them, which means that the option or the opportunity to get, no matter the odds, to trigger off and give them +1 to hit is always that much higher. And so the likelihood of you being able to get that +1 to hit goes up. So my next choice is a little bit of a dark horse choice. This is the Gladiator Reaper, and here's why. The Gladiator Reaper has got some bolt weapons on it. It's got 2 kind of Tempest bolters just sitting on sponsons on the side, and they shoot quite a lot, so you get the 6s there. But the number one thing is it just shreds infantry, absolutely shreds them. If you take that and you point it at a 10-man unit, that 10-man unit is for sure donezo, because Vehicles in this Crimson Fist, no matter the odds rule, count as 5, which means that it needs to shoot at something that has 10 or more models in it, and it'll get +1 to hit. But when it does, it shoots so much that you cannot ignore the amount of damage output that it has. 24 shots off of the Heavy Onslaught Twin Gatling cannons, and then another 16 shots off the Tempest Bolters, and then I usually put the rocket pod up top for just that little bit of extra shooting. And that many shots coming off of that vehicle with a pretty big range, actually. You can get at 30-inch range if you want to sacrifice some shots. And the amount of times that it has saved me by stripping my opponent of an objective or something like that has helped me both competitively and feel like I am narratively representing what Crimson Fists are like on the battlefield. It's a great choice. So I absolutely love the Crimson Fist, just like I absolutely love all of the Space Marine chapters. And so if you ever want to play and represent Crimson Fist on the battlefield, there's a couple of choices and a couple of stories that you can grab onto and you can build your army around. I will see you next time on Master the Chapter.